Hey guys, welcome back to another TEKDEP PC build video. In today's episode, we're going to be building a brand new gaming PC for a customer. If you're interested in a similar unit or creating your own unit, you can either click the link below for pre-built PCs from us or get parts. Let's go ahead and get into it. So we're going to start by opening up the motherboard box here. And we're going to take out these SATA cables, the I/O board, a rear I/O board, and that's all we need other than the motherboard. This driver disc, documentation, and M.2 screw we're not going to need for this build, so they're going to stay in the box. Alright, for this build we went with the ASRock A520M HVD because the client didn't need Wi-Fi and was just looking for a very simplistic build, so we went ahead and chose this board here. Inside of this build, we're going to go ahead and put the AMD Ryzen 5 5600G. This is a great bang for buck processor. It's going to do everything the customer needs and more for years to come. Included in this box is the CPU cooler that we're going to go ahead and use today. We're going to go ahead and unbox that as well. Alright, so the very first thing we're going to do is open up our CPU clamshell and then our CPU socket. Take our CPU out and slot it into place. If you notice, there's a gold arrow on the actual CPU, as well as a little marked arrow down here on the motherboard. That's how we know exactly which way to orient the board, the chip in the board. Now we're going to go ahead and close the socket. We're going to take our Phillips head screwdriver and remove these stock mounting brackets. Some coolers will use these, AM3 coolers will use it. The AM4 included Wraith Spire does not. Alright, so I'm going to orient the AMD logo facing this way. I'm going to start by threading all of these in a cross pattern. Alright, so that's our CPU cooler installed. And now all we have to do is go ahead and plug in the CPU fan. We're just going to tuck this wire down in here to get it out of sight. And while we're on this side of the board, we're going to go ahead and install the RAM. In this build, we went with 16 gigs of DDR4 3200 megahertz. Should be more than enough for everything gaming related and background tasks as well. To install RAM, as you see there, you want to go ahead and line up this center notch on the DIMM with the missing key on the board itself, and then you're just going to press in and it'll click down like that. Repeat the same process for your second stick, and that's our RAM all installed. Our motherboard's now ready for installation, so let's go ahead and move on to the next step. So the next step is going to be installing the motherboard, but before we do that, we need to go ahead and take our rear I/O shield and orient it the correct way. So if you're ever super curious on which way it goes, of course you can line it up on the back of the motherboard, that will tell you, but usually the three audio inputs and outputs go on the bottom. We're just going to snap this into the back of the case here. There we go. That's the I/O shield fully installed. Now we're going to take our motherboard and line it up with our rear I/O shield. I like to use the rear I/O shield as an indicator of where the board is, because if you line it up in the rear I/O, you're going to line up with all your standoffs here. And there we are. So now we're going to go ahead and take the included screws that came with the case and screw the motherboard in. As you can see, this case already came pre-installed with 3 fans up front, 2 at the top and 1 in the rear. So we don't have to do any work there, we just have some internal cable management to do here. Okay, so we're going to start with the USB 3.0 for the front panel right here. It's going to go ahead and go in this connector. It is keyed, it will only go in one way. There's a tooth that will stick out, snaps in just like so. This cable right here is going to run to the second chassis fan header for the top 2 fans. We're going to do our best to hide that cable in a moment as well. And then down here we have the front panel connectors. We'll get to in a second. This connector is going to go in the other chassis fan header at the bottom here. This is our front panel USB connector. It is also keyed, only going to go in one way. This is our front panel HD audio connector. There's a dead pin or a missing pin. It will only go in one way, just like every other connector on the board. There we are. So now we just have the front panel down here. We have a power switch on the far right, and we have a power LED, positive and negative, and a hard drive LED. Best case for most of you guys is going to be consulting with your motherboard manual, simply because this can be a different pin layout. Usually it isn't, but it can be a different pin layout, and especially if it's your first time, it can be confusing. But they are labeled on here, so it looks like our power switch is going to be pin 4 and 6. Our power LED, positive is going to be on the left and negative on the right. So 1 and 2. 2 is going to be your negative and 1 is going to be your positive. And hard drive LED, I usually don't plug it in because it's an annoying flashing indicator, but that's going to go ahead and be pin 6 and 7. Alright, so there's two more things we're going to do right now on the inside of this PC. Very first thing we're going to do is take one of our SATA cables and plug it in to the motherboard and feed it through this little grommet right here where the USB 3 cable is running. This is going to be for our SSD later on. And we'll get the rest of that cable fed through once we go ahead and go through the other side. Now we're going to go ahead and install the graphics card. So we're going to go ahead and remove this rear cover here. Open up our PCIe slot. And I'm going to go ahead and take a look before I break off the wrong ones. We're going to break slots 2 and 3 free. This is a case with breakaway ones, not unscrewable ones. So, all right, since we've got those 2 slots broken away for our RTX 2080, now we can go ahead and slot it into place. It's a little hard to see. There we are. Now we're going to go ahead and take 2 screws and secure it into place. A little trick I like to do is tilting upwards on the actual graphics card at the top here, just to make sure the card is aligned flat and doesn't sag over time like that. Alright, so that's everything done on this side, minus the actual wiring for the CPU 8-pin, the CPU 24-pin, and then the graphics card as well. So now we're going to flip the case over, install the power supply and SSD, and then cable manage everything. So the first thing we're going to do is install our SSD. There's 2 included trays here. I'm going to go ahead and use the bottom one here. And to install the SSD, all you have to do is line up the screw holes like this. And using the included 2.5-inch screws with the case, just screw them in. If you guys are looking for any parts, tools for your gaming PC, check us out at TEKDEP.com. If you have any other devices you'd like to be repaired, we do offer mail-in repair services as well as advanced data recovery. Alright, so that's our 1 terabyte Lexar SSD installed. We're going to slot the feed in and screw it back into place. So this is the SATA data cable that's running from the motherboard. We're just going to do some cable management with this guy real quick and run it over to our SSD. So again, as most things are when you build a PC, it's keyed. It's only going to go in one way. If it's not going in, you probably have the keys reversed, and just flip the connector around, it'll go right in. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and grab our power supply. We're going to orient it facing downward so it can pull fresh air in from the bottom of the case. We're going to move our other cables out of the way and slide it in. And then we're going to take the 4 included power supply screws and secure it to the case at the back. Alright, that's the power supply fully installed. Now we just have to run some wires. We're going to start with our main ones. So this is the motherboard 24 pin. We're going to run that up here, right where it's going to come out and plug into. Let me fix my cable grommet real quick. Alright, so now we're going to run that 24 pin up and through its home. Now we're going to look for the CPU 8 pin, which is labeled on the side here. That's going to go up top, right where it's going to plug in. And now we're looking for, yep, there they are, the PCIe connectors. They're going to go ahead and run right through this lower grommet here. This is going to come out right where they need to plug in at, near the graphics card. And the rest of these connectors we are either not going to use, such as the Molex ones, which there are 2 of. We can just set those aside. There are going to be 2 SATA connectors, so we're going to use at least one of these. So this included case, the Montec Air 100, has an ARGB controller, which does need SATA power. So we're going to go ahead, feed it through, make sure it's cable managed decently back here, which we'll fix in a second. And then we're going to have to plug in our SSD up here as well. There we are. Now the rest of these cables I like to wrap up and then zip tie and leave them right down here, right in front of the power supply. As far as this SATA cable goes, we're also going to do the same with it. Get it down in here. And then before we can cable manage the rest, we do have to flip the case over and plug in all of our connections, and then we can go ahead and route the cable where it should go. So I'm going to start at the top left here with the CPU 4 pin. Normally it's an 8 pin, but on this board it's a 4 pin. So we're going to go ahead and split our 8 pin in half just by pushing them apart. There we are. And we're going to plug one of them in. There we are. Now we're going to move on to the 24 pin. Right over here, pull some more through. Slot it in, click it in, there it is. Fix our cable grommet later. Now we're going to take our PCIe connectors, and one of them is going to be a 6 pin and one is an 8. So we're going to go ahead and plug in the 6 pin first by removing one of the 8 pins. And now we're going to plug in the 8 pin daisy connection. And hide this cable in between. And zip tie these together. There we are, just some cable management to do in the back, but we'll see you guys when we turn it on. Alright, we've got our power plug here. Let's go ahead and plug in the power supply, turn the power supply on, and hit our power button. Alrighty, there we are, everything looks good. Just have to install the operating system and some drivers and get this shipped out to our customer. Thank you guys for watching. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. And with the help of the community, we'll be sure to assist you. If you saw any parts or tools you need in the video, check us out at TEKDEP.com or click the link below for mail-in repairs and more PCs and PC parts like this. See you guys on the next episode.